And I'm excited to be continuing on in this series. We started last week. We started this new series called Stressed. And what we are looking at is the stress that all of us face in our life, but ultimately how Jesus can give us an edge when it comes to dealing with our stress. Now, I don't think it's hard to convince people that we all have stress in our life, right? You just look around your life, and somebody said this the other day. They said that busy is the new fine. Here's what they meant by that. When you say, hey, how you doing to someone, what we used to always say was, I'm fine, I'm good, I'm doing fine. Now it seems like the standard answer when you say, how you doing is, oh man, I'm busy. You know, I got so much going on. I hear it all the time from people. I find myself saying it to people all the time. So we all have so much stress in our life from family stuff and jobs and works and money and schedule and all this stuff. All these things stress us about this world and where it's going. And we get stressed about how our kids are going to do and how we're going to get that promotion at work or not. We get stressed about world affairs. We get stressed about Donald Trump, whether he is or is not going to get the nomination. I'm not going to say either way, but some people get really stressed out by that stuff, and so we all have that in our life. We all deal with it, right? But here's the good news of Jesus, is that when you really are connected to him, he gives you an edge in dealing with your stress. Now, that doesn't mean that Jesus just is going to take all your stress away. That's not what we're saying. We're not saying that if you come to Jesus, it's all just, puppy dogs and rainbows for the rest of your life. That's not it at all. We all still are going to have the same stuff we deal with, but as a follower of Jesus, now you have a whole new way of dealing with that stress. And so last week we started off the series by talking about the pros and the cons of stress. And the cons are pretty obvious, right? Stress it can raise your blood pressure, and you can gain weight, and you can, not sleep well, and anxiety, all that stuff. But that's pretty obvious. But there actually are some pros to stress as well. It can actually motivate you to do stuff with your life, so you're not, living in your mom's basement when you're 35, and you can, it gives you some motivation to do something in your life, and as a Christian, ultimately what stress can do is it can draw you to a deeper level of dependence on God. That's the whole, I think, reason why God allows stress, so that it draws our eyes to him and causes us to seek his face. And as we are stressed and we are drawn to him, what it does is it builds just a deeper and more beautiful connection and relationship with God. Well, now what we're going to be doing for the next several weeks is we're going to be talking about specific types of stress, and how being connected to Jesus really actually allows us to deal with that in a better way. And today what we're going to talk about is hectic stress. That's what we're calling it. We're calling hectic stress that type of stress where you just feel like you are being pulled in 1,000 different directions. How many people can relate to this, right? You look at your life and you have so many different avenues and aspects to your life, all calling for attention, all calling for to be the priority, and we find ourselves just getting pulled here and pulled there and pulled there, and it kind of becomes this weight, this burden that we feel in our life. And we just kind of walk around heavy because we have all this overwhelming feeling like we've never quite finished what we should be doing. Like there's always 5 more things we could have done that day. It's a burdensome thing to lay your head on your pillow at night and feel like, oh man, I forgot about this, and I didn't get to this, and I meant to call that person, I didn't get to do this. That's an overwhelming feeling because we get pulled in so many different directions. Now, it's a lot of different type of stuff that pulls us. Sometimes, the main thing that pulls us in 1,000 different directions is just our schedule. You look at your schedule in the day, you look at your calendar on your phone, and you have so many things on there, right? You've got work obligations, and you got your boss who's giving you this deadline, and you got to get this, and you got to make your numbers and all this stuff, and that can stress you out. And then you've got your family, right, and all the stuff that goes along with that. If you're like me, I've got 4 kids, and so our kids' schedule can be very stressful because we got this game over here, and this practice over here, and this lesson over here, and this birthday party over here, and it's like all the time getting pulled in all these different directions, trying to shuffle your kids to where they need to be. And then you got your own stuff in life, things you get invited to, and you got to go to this wedding, you got to go to that party, and all this stuff. And then but you still want to build into their time to, have some relaxation, and you feel like I never have time for myself, and so just your schedule can feel very stressful. For a lot of people, a big source of stress is money, finances. You look at your budget and you're like, man, I have this finite amount of money in any given month, right? But then I have all these things that need money, right? I've got my college student loans, and I've got my mortgage payment, and I got a car payment, and I've got to pay for that ATV I bought last year, and then I went to that timeshare presentation, now I got to pay for that too, right? You have all these debts and things, right? On top of just all the regular bills. And it's like, I got this much money and all this stuff, and it can be very stressful trying to figure out how am I going to have enough money for all this stuff. Sometimes we feel religious stress. We feel like, I should be doing more, and God's probably disappointed with me. God probably is mad at me now, and I got this hang up still. I got this sin that I can't quite seem to shake, and I know I just feel shame about it, and that just feels very, very stressful. Sometimes we have health stress, right? Feel like maybe I'm overweight, or I'm underweight, or am I eating enough? Am I eating the right things? Is my blood pressure too high? I should probably be exercising more, and should I be gluten-free? Maybe, I don't know, and no, you don't need to be, but all the stuff, that just pulls us, and we feel all this like stress about our health, right? So we have all these things pulling us in all these different directions, right? And all these priorities in our life, our work and our family and our jobs, and I need to exercise, and then I got to pay for all this, right? And it can all feel a bit overwhelming at times, and you just kind of go through life feeling like, I've got so much to do. I've got so much on my plate. Well, here's kind of an interesting thought I want to kind of start out with today. As we think about all this stuff, it can be easy to think of all this busyness, all this stuff we have in our life. It can be easy to kind of feel of it like that's the enemy. And if I just didn't have all that stuff, life would be so much better. But here's the reality. Here's something I want you to think about. The truth is this. The stuff that makes you hectic, it's the stuff you really care about. Think about that. The reason why it stresses you out, it's in your schedule and in your budget, it's because you put it there. So you obviously care about it, right? The stuff that is on your calendar, no one went into your iPhone and put it on there for you, right? Like, you put it there. At some point in your life, this thing, this meeting, this class, this whatever it is, that was important to you, so you put it on your calendar, so you care about it. That stuff you bought, no one grabbed your arm and forced you to swipe the Visa, right? Like maybe your husband for the TV at Super Bowl time. I don't know, but like you chose to buy that stuff. All the other priorities we have in our life, your health, I want to save for vacation, whatever it is, all that stuff that we get pulled all these different directions. The thing is, we chose that stuff, and we chose it because we care about it on a certain level at least. And so most of the stress in our life is a result of choices and priorities that we make. I was thinking about it like this. I remember a couple years ago, I was at Lagoon with our kids. And Lagoon is just like an awful place. It's like hell on earth, to parents at least, right? It's like hot and sticky and expensive and dirty, and it's just like noisy, and it's awful. But we were there because our kids like it, so we were at Lagoon, and I remember spotting this other family that was there, and what I noticed was they had a red wagon, kind of like this radio flyer wagon here. And they had this red wagon they were pulling through the park. And they brought that wagon. I figured out some families do this when they go to Lagoon. Maybe you're one of these families, right? Because you have to bring all the stuff with you to make it a good experience at Lagoon, right? And so when they were there, they had their wagon, and it was piled with all of their swimsuits and towels and floaties when they go to the water part, right? Then they had to have a change of clothes after that. They needed to have a cooler with some snacks and some drinks for it. And then mom had to have her big purse there, and dad had to have his camcorder there, and there was just all of this stuff. And so I remember seeing this family with, 2 or 3 kids, and they had this wagon, and it was just overflowing with all of the stuff to make their day at Lagoon good, right? Well, here's the thing. It looked like probably their oldest kid. He was maybe 7 or 8, and he was in charge, apparently, of hauling this wagon through the park. And so I saw this little kid, and he had this wagon. It was just like literally overflowing stuff hanging out everywhere. And this kid was like, just like, this is awful. He's complaining. He's trying to drag this wagon through Lagoon. He looked miserable. I remember just seeing that, and it just struck me. I thought, here is this family at an amusement park, right? They're here to have fun, and these parents probably came here for their kid's sake so that their kid would have a good time, right? In order to have a good time, they had to bring up all this stuff. They had to load up their wagon with all of this stuff to make sure their kid had fun. And what was the result? The kid was miserable hauling all this stuff that their parents thought he needed to have a good time. And I thought, man, that is such a picture of our life. You know why? Because we all have a wagon too. Every one of us has a wagon that we are carrying through life. And we pile it up with all this stuff that we think we need, and that some of it's really good and some of it's maybe not so good, but it's all the stuff that we have in our life that we care about, and we drag it through life feeling like this is what we need. And that wagon gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And so I brought a little wagon up here just to kind of illustrate this. And this is kind of like some of the stuff that might be on my wagon, you know. If I had a bigger wagon, I would bring it, right? So this is kind of the smallest wagon I could find, right, to fit on the stage. But, you know, on my wagon here, I've got like, you know, a picture of my family here, right? It's the most important thing, you know, for me. So I love my family. So that's a big part of my wagon, you know. So it's obviously that's got to be there, my family. That's great. But I have some other stuff, you know, that I like. I kind of like tech stuff. So I've got my iPad here, you know. I've got my little iPad with pictures of my family on it. Aren't they very cute? And I like to have that going for me. And so that's on my wagon. I've got clothes, right? Because we all have clothes that we've got to wear, and we care about that kind of stuff, our image and what we look like, and we care about having the right stuff. I brought my suit here. This is my wedding and funeral suit. It's the only reason I have a suit, really, and it's true. I always say if you see an Alpine Church pastor in a suit, somebody's either getting married or has died. And so that's why I have to have that for either of those occasions, you know. But then I own a house, and so I have to have my tools along with there, you know, so I can do a little work when I need to on my house, and that's a big part of it. And then we also have on there stuff we're proud of here. Like I've got this trophy right here. This is my highest athletic accomplishment in life. Truly, right here. This is if you read it, it's the Fox Valley Park District 2003 Co-ed Softball Championship that I won this. I was very proud of this. This is sentimental. This is the first team I played on with my wife, and we went undefeated, and we won. So I'm kind of proud of that. So that's on part of my trailer, you know. We've got aspirations. You know, someday I'd love to have a boat, because who doesn't want a boat? And I used to be a boat captain, actually, and so I stole this from the last ship I worked on my last day on the job. I took this on my way out, and I hope no one drowned because I took the life ring. There was others, but as a souvenir. But someday, you know, I'd love to have a boat again, you know. And then of course you have all this other stuff, but you want to have fun in life. And so I've got my golf clubs. I enjoy golfing, and you can see they're pretty crummy clubs. I'm not a very good golfer, but I've got my golf clubs here, and then I've got my pool noodle because someday I'd love to go on vacation, maybe someday in my life, you know. And so we've got all this stuff that we carry around, right? And if I had a bigger wagon, you could put more stuff on there too, right? You could put your house on there, your furniture on there, your cars on there, all your hopes and dreams, all this stuff. And here's the thing, as we go through life, our wagon gets piled higher and higher and higher, and it gets heavier and heavier. And all of a sudden, all that stuff, it becomes a burden in our life. Well, here's the thing, we're not the first people to deal with this. We're not the first people to feel this stress from all these pressures and directions we are pulled in our life. And in fact, Jesus addressed this very issue 2,000 years ago. And that's what we're going to look today. If you have a Bible, open up to the book of Matthew chapter 11. Matthew chapter 11, Jesus is talking about this kind of stress in life. And he offers us a solution, a way to have an edge when it comes to that stress. Here's what Jesus says in Matthew chapter 11, starting in verse 28. Then Jesus said, "Come to me, all you who are weary and carry a heavy burden, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you. Let me teach you, because I'm humble and gentle at heart, and you will find rest for your souls." Jesus said, "For my yoke is easy to bear, and the burden I give you is light." Now just stop and just think about that beautiful verse that Jesus gives us here, this beautiful picture that Jesus gives. He starts off and he says, "Come to me, all you who are weary, tired, worn out. Come to me, those of you who are carrying heavy burdens. Your wagon is full and you got this issue and that issue." And Jesus says, if you're tired and worn out and feel like you're carrying a burden in life, come to me. And what does he say you will find when you come to him? He says it twice right here. Come to me and I will give you rest. When we connect with Jesus, we find rest. Rest for our souls. Isn't rest just sounds so nice? Don't we all want some rest? Isn't like a nap on a Saturday afternoon like one of the best things in the world, Like we just want that rest. And Jesus says, come to me and you can find that. And he also says this, that when you come to me, your life is going to be such that it's going to be easy to bear. And the weight you carry in life, it's going to be light. So come to me and you can find this stuff. Does this sound appealing? Isn't that what we all want? We want rest. We want something that's easy to bear, a burden that is light. And you can have that in Jesus. That's what we're talking about, how Jesus gives you an edge when it comes to stress. So what does that really mean? How do we get that rest? What is the solution there? How do we find it? Well, notice what Jesus doesn't say. If you look back at the verse, Jesus doesn't say, come to me and just sort of check out of life. Just retire, right? Just leave everything behind and move to Boca and collect seashells and drink Mai Tais. Like that's the life. And then you'll finally be rested. No, it's not what he says. And he doesn't say, come to me and let me add some more stuff to your wagon. Let me add some more religion to your wagon, and then you will finally be okay. No, that's not what he says. No, he uses this interesting imagery here. He says, come to me, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you my yoke. And you're like, what the heck does that mean? Right? Unless you're like a farmer from the 1500s, you might not be familiar with what a yoke is. So let me show you a picture. Here's what a yoke is. Right, here's a picture of two oxen, and they're walking along, right? These are big, manly animals, right? And there's this wooden thing here, and that's what's called a yoke. There's the wooden part, kind of the crossbeam, and it has these two sort of U-shaped things that connect them, right? So that's a yoke. And you know what a yoke does? The purpose of a yoke is to connect two animals together. Right? So that an animal can come together and be partnered with another animal, and the idea is that because they are working together, they can pull a lot more than they would be able to by themselves. Right? So the image that Jesus uses, maybe he used that image, it's very common in his day. Maybe there was a couple oxen right there, or a couple donkeys that were yoked together, and maybe he pointed at them and said, take my yoke upon you. And see, why did Jesus say that? Think about that imagery of what a yoke does. A yoke connects two things together. And so when Jesus was saying, take my yoke upon you, he was saying, come and be connected to me. Join with me. Be partnered with me. Be united with me. And as you are connected to Jesus, the result, it says, is that you will finally find rest, and that your burden in life will become much easier. And maybe that's counterintuitive, because maybe you're one of those people that thought like, man, I got a pretty busy and full life as it is, and if I try to bring God into that, man, that's just like another thing in my life, and that's going to be too much. Maybe you're like, I don't even really want to go to church on Sunday. Someone drugged me here, whatever, and I don't have time to be reading my Bible and praying, all that God stuff. Maybe it's good, but if my schedule's already full. I'm getting pulled in so many different directions. I don't have time to add God into that also. And what Jesus says is, no, that's the opposite way of thinking about it. He says, when you are actually connected to me, when you are yoked together with me, the result is that life actually works much better. And your load doesn't become heavier with Jesus, it actually becomes lighter. And so let's explore what this means. What does it really mean to be yoked together? What does it mean that when we are yoked with Jesus, that all of a sudden that is easy to bear and our burden becomes lighter? Well, there's a few ways that being yoked together with Jesus does that. Here's the first thing. When we are yoked with Jesus, we take on a new identity in Christ. Right? We fundamentally have a new identity in Christ. The Bible says in 2 Corinthians 5 that everyone who is in Christ is a new creation. You are made brand new when you are in Christ. And you have this whole new identity as a child of God. Now here's why that matters. Because so much of the time, so much stuff that we carry through life, so much of the stuff we have on our wagon is all about trying to establish and maintain our identity. It's all about trying to make sure we feel a certain way about ourselves and that we are trying to project an image that we want other people to think about us as well, right? We all have an identity that we want people to know about us, and it's important to us. And so the result is we dress a certain way, and we do certain things, and we own certain cars, and live in certain neighborhoods, and search for certain kinds of jobs because we have an identity that we are trying to establish, and we want to be accepted. Right? All of us have that desire to be accepted. And see, that's hard because when you think about your identity, it's actually complex. You might think of your identity just as like the information that's on your driver's license, right? If I had my wallet, I pull up my driver's license, there's my picture and my height and my eye color and hair color and weight. Well, at least it's my goal weight that's on my driver's license. That's what I want people to think my weight is, right? So that's what I put on there, and in faith that someday I'll be at that weight. So but our identity is more than just the facts that are on our driver's license, right? Our identity includes all of our past and our family of origin stuff and our likes and dislikes and our preferences and our experiences for better or for worse. It's all of our mistakes and the skeletons in our closet, all the stuff that we hope nobody ever really knows about us. It's our baggage, it's our struggles, it's all of that stuff. That's all really our identity. And again, every single one of us wants to be accepted. And we look at our identity and some of it's really good and some of it's like, oh, I'm not really happy about that. But we all want to be loved. We all want to be accepted. And so we go through a lot of effort to try to present a certain image so that people will accept us. And that can be stressful. It can be burdensome. I was thinking about that. I've got one more thing in my wagon here I didn't bring on earlier. This is a beauty of a coat here. And this, believe it or not, this is a coat I wore every day in high school for about 3 or 4 months. And let me tell you why. It's because I was going through, when I was 16 years old, I went through a little identity crisis where I decided I wanted to be a redneck, right? Now, that's not me. I grew up in the suburbs of Seattle, right? Like, I'm city people, right? But for some reason, I decided, well, I know the reason why. It's because when I turned 16, the car that my dad gave to me was his old beat-up truck. And it was a 1975 Ford F-350. Right? It was a beauty of a truck. It was all rusted out over the wheels, all around. It was this oxidized, faded red color. It was the ultimate redneck mobile, right? Super cab. It had a big gun rack mounted in the back where I'd mount my umbrella because I lived in Seattle, right? And it was just super redneck. I had a 10-foot CB antenna in the corner of the thing that would flop around, and so it was this very redneck truck, and I was very embarrassed by it because this wasn't me. And so I'm this 16-year-old kid, and you're trying to, be cool and be accepted, and you want people to like you. And I remember going to school just being like mortified. This was the car I had. All the other kids had the cool cars, like they had the Honda Accord, and here's what I had was this. But after a couple weeks, I remember this one guy that was kind of a cool guy at school that I didn't really know that well. He just walked by me one day in the hallway and said, "I like your truck." And I thought, oh, this guy's cool. He likes my truck. Interesting. And then a couple weeks later, somebody else said, "Nice truck," in the parking lot. And then what really did it was Beth Denherter. Beth Denherter was a girl that I had a crush on, and she said, "Steve, that truck is so cool." And all of a sudden, I was sold, like, this is who I want to be, right? And so literally the next day, I come to school, and I've got cowboy boots on and a hat, and I went down to the Army surplus store and bought this coat right here off the rack. Still had deer blood on it from the last guy that used it, and it was like, I had the whole image, right? And all of a sudden, I turned redneck. I started listening to country music on the way to school. I hate country music, right? But it was all part of this image that I was trying to portray to people because I wanted to be accepted. But here was the thing. That's not me, right? That's really not who I am. I really do hate country music, right? And so after a while, it got really old trying to keep up this image. And that truck got 4 miles to a gallon. So it was expensive trying to keep up that image and drive it around, right? And it just got to be burdensome, and it wore me out trying to find this acceptance for this identity I was trying to create. And again, it's kind of silly to look at now. Kids go through little phases like that. But as adults, we kind of do the same thing. We spend a lot of time and energy trying to purport a particular, reputation and an image that we want people to think about us. And it can wear you out. It can wear us out trying to earn people's approval, coworkers' approval, sometimes God's approval. That can stress us out. It just becomes a burden in our life. But here is the good news. When you come to Jesus, like I said, you have this new identity because you are adopted into the family of God. Now you are a son or a daughter of God, and nothing will ever change that. And that is incredibly encouraging to know that I can sit back and know that that is the most important thing about me. The most fundamental thing about my identity is not that I like to play golf or drive boats or that I'm a Seahawks fan or whatever, The most important thing about me is that I'm a follower of Jesus. That's my identity because I'm connected to Him. So no matter what anybody else thinks about me, that's okay because I know my Father in heaven is fully aware of who I am. He knows me fully and He loves me fully and He accepts me fully. And when we can take confidence in that, man, that just erases, it just melts away so much stress. We don't have to go through that rat race of trying to measure up and earn approval. We can just rest in who we are because we are connected to Jesus. So that's the first way that really we can find rest in this life is through our identity in Jesus. There's another way that He gives us an edge, and that's because He gives us a whole new perspective. When we follow Jesus, we have a whole new perspective on life. Again, think about your wagon, whatever might be in yours. In your wagon, there's probably some really good stuff, and probably some stuff that maybe is not so good, maybe some stuff that's neutral. But a lot of us end up with all this stuff in our wagon as we go through life, and very infrequently do we ever stop and think about what we have and should it be there or not. We tend not to evaluate what's in our wagon. It just kind of ends up there. We just kind of go through life and stuff gets added on, and over time you're like, how'd that get on the wagon? Why is this in my life? Why am I involved in this thing? It's like all this stuff just gets piled onto your wagon as you go through life, and we rarely stop to actually evaluate it. But here's what Jesus is saying. Jesus is saying, when you come to me and you are yoked together with me, here's what you are doing. He's not saying, here, let me just add a bunch of more stuff to your existing wagon. And He's not even saying, hey, here's a new Jesus wagon and start pulling that wagon along with that other wagon. That's not what He's saying. He's saying, become yoked to me, and now we're going to be pulling together a brand new wagon. Now we're going to be pulling together and trying to put stuff in our life that lines up with what Jesus would actually want to be there. And so now our wagon over time becomes, hopefully, we intentionally choose to have our wagon line up with what Jesus would want in that wagon. So what we are doing is we are not just sort of like adding things to our existing wagon. We are taking on a whole new outlook on life, a whole new perspective on life, one that is shaped by Jesus' priorities. And so really what Jesus is saying is here, exchange your burden for mine. Now, as you think about that, as you think about this new wagon that you're pulling because you're connected with Jesus, some of the stuff is good stuff, and some of that will probably be on that new wagon. Stuff like your family, right? Your family's still a part of your wagon, right? And your job and your hobbies, all that stuff is great. You can keep that on your wagon, that's good. But there's probably some stuff that might be on your wagon that probably shouldn't be there if you're trying to line your priorities up with Jesus's. There's probably some hang-ups, some habits, some old priorities, some things that you do that you know you shouldn't do. And Jesus is saying, get that stuff off your wagon. Don't be carrying that around. And there might be some stuff that's okay, but it needs to be moved around. It's not quite the priority in your life that it should be, and so you need to kind of adjust in your life where things fall in their priority. There's all this change that takes place. But here's the thing, that can be stressful, right? Because we like our wagon, right? It's on there because we care about it. We put that stuff there, right? So we like that stuff, and it can be kind of scary to think about change in that because this kind of works for me. This is what's comfortable. This makes sense to me. I've been this way for so long, I don't want to change it. It's like my father-in-law. My father-in-law, until very recently, shockingly recently, was still paying $10 a month for a Juno email account. Y'all have heard it. If you're under 30, you don't even know what Juno is, right? But back in the day, you used to have to pay for email, and he has had this Juno email account since the 90s. He has paid $10 a month every month since like 1994 for an email account that's free that you can get anywhere in the world. Like, and I've been telling him for years, like, Mike, you got to dump the paid email account. It's like, it's ridiculous. It's like Gmail's so much better and it's free, whatever, But he's like, but I'm used to it. I know how it works. It's comfortable. And that's how a lot of us get in life. It doesn't make any sense, but we're just kind of used to it. It's comfortable. We like it. And so we just drag it around. But when we come to Jesus, he is giving us a whole new set of priorities. But if that's going to happen, it takes some choices that we have to make. We're the ones that have to choose, how do we make sure that the stuff on our wagon is really what God would want to be there? We have a short little video here. Watch, it's about a minute-long video, and it kind of introduces a tool that I encourage you to check out this week. Watch this short video.
Hey everyone, here's a great activity you can try this week with your family, with your small group, or with your mentor. Download our worksheet online called Comparing Your Priorities with God's, and there are 3 things it will help you to do with your family or your small group. Scheduling priorities, write out your 3 top scheduling priorities and God's 3 top priorities if you think he could fill it out for you, and then financial priorities, and then relational priorities. And if you want to, you can throw in a couple of extra categories as well. And be sure at the end of that to talk about your takeaway. Write out a personal action step based on the activity. Now, here's the point of that activity. As Christians, we should align our priorities with God's priorities. That means we're going to try to see his perspective on things and make the adjustments in our life. But it's hard to do that a lot of times on our own. So that's why I encourage you to do it with a small group, with your family, or with a mentor, and be sure to do it this week.
Now think, if you were to make that list up, if you were to line out on your list your actual priorities, compare them to God's priorities, when it comes to your schedule, when it comes to your finances, those kinds of things, that could be a pretty convicting little exercise, right? We might find that, man, these things that I'm carrying around in my wagon, this really isn't probably what God wants, or at least I need to change some things around. And again, that might freak us out a little bit because we like how we've kind of set up our wagon, but as we do that, remember, it just brings more and more burden into our life. We have to get to that place where we say, Jesus, I trust you. I trust what you're saying, that if I really do have this new perspective and line my priorities up with your priorities, my life is not going to be worse. Jesus says your life's going to be better. That's how you're going to find rest. That's how your burden will be light and easy to bear. I encourage you to make sure that as you connect with Jesus, that you try to line yourself up with his new perspective that he brings to you. One more thing, the last thing here, I think it's really the most powerful thing about this, and that's this, that when we become a follower of Jesus, we take on a new pulling partner. This is really the best thing about it. The best thing about being connected to Jesus is that now you are no longer at this life alone. Now you've got God connected to you right there. Right? Remember what a yoke does? A yoke connects 2 things. It puts 2 people together. And so when Jesus used that imagery, such a great picture, he's saying, listen, come into me, be connected to me, and here's what's going to happen. We are going to be joined together, united together, and now you don't have to go through this life alone. You don't have to bear those burdens alone. I'm going to be connected to you, and I'm going to be pulling right alongside you. And God's a pretty good pulling partner. He's pretty strong. That's this incredible benefit we have of being connected to Jesus. So when we are following him, we take his yoke upon us. We're not only now carrying this new wagon he has given us with his priorities on it, but now he's there pulling right alongside us. And what that enables us to do is actually to be able to pull so much more in life. Here's an interesting thing. Again, maybe why Jesus chose this imagery of being yoked. Especially when it comes to oxen. Here's this powerful kind of fun fact when it comes to that kind of a thing. A typical ox can pull around 2,000 pounds by themselves, which is pretty impressive, right? And so you might think if you have one ox who can pull 2,000 pounds and another ox who can pull 2,000 pounds, if you yoke them together, well, then they could pull 4,000 pounds, which would be pretty impressive, right? 2 tons. But that's not how it works. When you take 2 oxen who can each pull 2,000 pounds and you put them together, they can't pull 4,000 pounds. They can pull 8,000 pounds. There is this exponentially powerful thing that happens when you connect two beasts like that together. And we don't still fully understand how that works, but it's been proven over and over again. And that's what God is saying to us. When you come and you are joined to me, it's not like you can just do a little bit more. You're going to be able to do exponentially more in this life. And see, that's so important to know, because remember, when God says, come and I'll give you rest, he's not saying come and you can just slack off. Come and you can just retire to Boca. That's not what he's saying. He's saying come and you can actually start to live the life that I designed for you to live. Remember, God has you here for a purpose. God has a reason for you to be here on earth. He's got stuff for you to do. And only when we find and live out that stuff, then we can experience that life to the fullest, that abundant life that Jesus came and promised. And so Jesus says, listen, I want you to live for me. I want you to trust in me. And I want you to live to honor me. And I want you to try to help other people to know who I am. But the only way we can really do that is when we are connected to him. Jesus gives this great verse in John chapter 15. He says, those who remain in me and I in them, they will produce much fruit. For apart from me, you can do nothing. Think about what Jesus is saying here. When you remain in me, that word literally means to dwell with, to abide with, to live with. See, when you are connected to me, the result is then you can produce much fruit in your life. Now you can start to live out all that stuff that God has planned for you. But apart from him, you're stuck. You can't do anything. So again, you think your life, man, if I had God into my life, it's going to slow me down. I'm not going to be able to do all the stuff that I really want to do. It's just the opposite. When you are apart from him, when you're disconnected from him, well, that's when you're not really going to be able to do anything meaningful, at least. You're not really going to be able to experience that fullness of joy and satisfaction that God intends for you. That only comes when you remain in him. That's why he says, come and let's be yoked together. Let's be connected together. And as you do that, it gives you this new identity in him. It gives you a whole new perspective on life. And now you have him to pull alongside you. And so let me just close here by just encouraging you. If you're here today and you're a Christian, you've put your faith in Jesus, it can be very easy as life goes on and we get busy in life that God can just become kind of lower and lower of a priority in our life. And he kind of just gets pushed to the margins sometimes, and he's kind of on the back burner at times. And we think, man, I've got so much going on. I don't have time for God right now. I don't have time for church right now. I don't have time to read my Bible anymore right now. I've got all this other stuff. The truth is, the more you do that, the more you kind of disconnect yourself from God, the less you're actually going to be able to do in life, and the more burden and stress you will end up feeling. You're going to be that weary and heavy-burdened person. So if you're a follower of Jesus, the only way you're going to experience that rest is if you come and put him at the center of your life again and make those intentional choices to be connected to him. Intentionally choose to say, God, I want you in my life. I'm going to pursue you. I'm going to make serving you and knowing you and reading your word and praying to you and giving to you, all that. I'm going to make that a priority in my life. And as you do that, as you remain yoked to him, then your burden becomes so much lighter. And let me encourage you here, if you're here and you've not yet put your faith in Jesus, you kind of have kept God at an arm's length. Maybe you've been burned by church or religion in the past and you feel like, that's not for me. Maybe you feel like, man, church is all just about adding more rules and regulations and more stuff to my life, and I don't want that. Let me tell you, you're just missing out. When you live your life apart from being yoked to Jesus, you are setting yourself up for a life of being weary and worn out and tired. The only way you're going to truly find rest for your soul is when you connect to him. Because the Bible says this amazing thing happens when you come and you humble yourself and you recognize your sin and how much you need him. When you come and you put your faith and trust in Jesus, he comes into your life and he gives you this new life. And now he offers to come alongside you and to be connected to you. And now your real life begins and your whole life opens up. And now you can live the life that God truly intends for you. If you have questions about how you can do that, talk to the friend that maybe invited you here today, or talk to one of the leaders after the service. The only way you're going to truly find rest for your hectic soul is when you trust in Jesus. Let's pray.